John, welcome to Israel. Thank you much for your time. We really appreciate the hard work your team is doing. And we want to interview you about SEO. We did it in cooperation with a Facebook group called Parliament, which is run by Shmulik Dorenbaum, Nati Elimelech, Asaf Cohen, and Idan Ben-Or. It's a big Israeli SEO, advanced SEO group in Facebook. My name is Pavel Israelski. I'm the founder of Angora Media. One of our main activities is SEO. Here is Gideon Wellins, who is the head of international SEO in the company. We also have a popular SEO blog called Ask Pavel, in which we asked all the questions, the community, before this interview. And from those questions, we chose the most interesting one. And obviously, we will translate them back to Hebrew after this interview. So let's start by, I want to ask you, I'm sure most of the SEOs and webmasters in the world know you, but still for those who don't, if you can tell me a little bit about yourself and what are your most important missions and tasks in your team and your position, of course.
Okay. So I work kind of between the external community that's creating websites, like people like you, SEOs who are working on websites, and the internal engineering teams, the search policy teams, everything around search. And my team tries to coordinate between the two sides. So essentially what we try to do is to make it so that it's easier for you to be successful in search. That includes lots of documentation, it includes trying to help answer questions that come up from people, and just generally also taking your feedback back to the team so that when you see something that makes you unhappy or that's confusing, we bring that back to the team that is working on that.
Sounds amazing. Okay, so we're short in time, so let's dive into the questions.
Alright, so I'll ask the first question. It's from Shmulik Dorenbaum, or Shmuel as he's known in Israel. So his question is, if Google's aim is to bring users the most relevant results as fast as possible, often presenting it directly within the SERP without sending the traffic directly to the websites, and it's more evident on informational searches as well as other purchase intent queries such as flights, car rentals, and so on, what incentive will businesses have to keep indexing and optimizing their websites according to Google's guidelines?
I think it's something that's always something that we need to balance, and that the teams that work in search at Google, they care about quite a lot, in the sense that we want to help grow the external web, kind of the open web, and make sure that the information that is available there makes sense for users and is something that provides kind of the details that we can't just show in the search results. So some things are things where I think we can show an answer right away. Like when you're asking what the time is or what the time is in a different location, it's not that you need a website or a blog post that says, oh, like let me tell you about the time, but rather like you just want that answer. And for other things, you do need a lot of more detailed information, and for that, it definitely makes sense to send folks to other websites.
Sure.
So that's something that always needs to be balanced.
Great.
Okay, so next question is from Nati Elimelech from SEO Israel. Do you think someday backlinks won't be a significant factor in rankings anymore, and is Google actively trying to reach this point?
It's not that we want to kill all links. So I don't think that is something that is happening, but what is happening is, of course, more and more understanding of the content itself, and trying to understand what this content is about, which content is relevant in which ways, and for that we can really learn a lot more from the content itself. So I think over time the balances will shift a little bit, but it's not that like links will be completely irrelevant at some point, but things will kind of shift around. And I think that's something that has already been happening in the last, 10 years or so, where we find that for different types of searches and different situations, it makes more sense to focus on the content, and in other situations we need some help from the links to understand the context of that page within the whole web a little bit better.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify that point, is from my understanding, does that mean that we're going to be looking more and more at relevancy of the content plus the content surrounding the links that are pointing to the websites, so that it all makes sense in the natural language?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's something with all of the kind of better understanding of textual content launches that we've had recently. That's kind of a direction where we've seen that headed, especially for things that are not so straightforward, where people search for keyword type things, but where they ask a specific question, then understanding how that question maps to specific pieces of content, even if the words themselves don't match one-to-one. That's
Right.
something that we've been working on. Yeah.
Okay. Because I noticed actually recently with the latest update, the BERT update, that some of the changes in rankings were affected when it wasn't super clear what even from an English perspective, what the search intent was for the term itself, because it can have double meanings,
Yeah.
the word itself. So it was
Yeah.
interesting to see.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of room for kind of improvements there, and I would expect to see that still being worked on significantly in English, and definitely also in other languages where it's probably even trickier. I mean, you notice this quite a lot if you have a Google Home, kind of an assistant device, and you try to ask it natural questions.
Right.
Quite often you'll hear it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, ask me something easier. And that's, from my point of view, still a sign that we still have a lot of room to understand questions better and to understand the content better.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. So our next question is from Alona Basilenko, who's SEO consultant at Angora Media, and she asks, what are the error margins in Search Console when it comes to clicks versus sessions in Google Analytics? There are so many discrepancies in Search Console, so it'd be great to understand how to better analyze the data.
Okay, I don't know if we have like specific error margins, but analytics and Search Console are essentially looking at completely different data sources, in the sense that in Search Console we show what is happening in search and up until the point where people click through. And there is some filtering of queries that it takes place, mostly for privacy reasons, things that aren't being searched for a lot. And in analytics, it's essentially just the other side, and it's tracking it in a completely different way. So probably the trends will overlap quite a bit, but the exact numbers, they will never match. So that's something that I think is important to realize. And even within Search Console, because of the way that the different pipelines that they work there, it's really hard to map one number to a different report in Search Console, just because of all of the aggregation and kind of filtering that's happening, which is slightly different across different reports.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is from Idan Ben-Or from Rigo. Since 2006, we have seen a huge differences between the SEO techniques used to push Hebrew sites in Israel versus English sites abroad. The differences touch many elements such as quality of the content, backlinks, user experience, etc. Is the reasoning for this connected to difficulty in understanding the language, and do you believe those differences will disappear soon?
I don't know what the differences are. I have no idea how the Hebrew SEO community is working.
Or other language
Yeah.
/ country.
So one thing that I do notice is that different regions have different focuses, not so much from our side, but kind of what SEOs are working on, and that creates kind of a local competition in a slightly different focus. So I know some regions, they still focus on links quite a bit. And there, of course, if you're active as a website and everyone else has a ton of links, then you're kind of in a competitive field where it's like, well, other people have a lot of links. You can focus on links as well, or you can focus on something slightly different where it's harder to understand, like, will it work out or not? So it feels like there are these kind of regional ecosystems when it comes to search, and people focus on different things. I think for the most part that's fine. I don't see the need for everyone to do exactly the same thing. That's kind of the nice part about the web, is that we take all of these factors, we combine them together, and we try to weigh them off against each other. So it's not that everyone has to do the same thing. Will it become more uniform as we understand the text better? I don't know. I do see that in some languages we have more trouble understanding the language. I could imagine maybe Hebrew is one of those where it's trickier, where kind of understanding the words and the grammar of content is probably harder. I don't know Hebrew, but it's definitely something where I think there's still a lot of room to expand all of the non-English content, the non-English queries, all of that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the next question is from Jana Radwadowski, and the question is, what is the roadmap for the new Search Console platform? Are there any new things that you can tell us about, and when, and if you are planning to add back some of the useful and popular features from the previous version that have disappeared?
Features that have disappeared. So I mean, the things that we have kept are still there. You can still go to them with the legacy tools link. I imagine a lot of that will be transferred over into the new Search Console. Some of that I suspect won't be moved one-to-one, kind of like how we did things with the other reports in Search Console, in that we try to rethink what is the goal of this report, and not just transfer it one-to-one, but rather like how can we make it easier for people to get kind of the insights that they were needing from the old report in a new setup. And sometimes that means we'll try to interpret the data ourselves and bring you the results of that. Sometimes it might mean that we'll say, well, this is not something that people need to focus on anymore, maybe we should drop it. But I don't have any kind of pre-announcements that I can share with you. I can't talk about the brain interface feature that might or might not be launching. But I do know the team is busy working on this, so they're doing some great stuff.
Great.
Liat Lang from Netus asks, how does the strength or trust of a brand in the real world affect organic placement? According to the EAT guidelines, which is expertise, authority, and trust, in websites related to health, how does Google attempt to understand if the author is really trustworthy and authorized expert?
Yeah, I think those are always interesting topics. So on the one hand, we don't know what the real world is if it's not represented somewhere online. Luckily, pretty much everything is represented online, so we can kind of like follow up on some things there. But in particular, with regards to the quality rater guidelines, where this is coming from, this is something that we tell our quality raters to watch out for. So what happens is we try to improve our algorithms, and we give the quality raters a set of search results, like with A/B versions, and say like which of these search results are better. And we give them these guidelines to say, like, make your evaluation based on these guidelines. So it's not that our algorithms are explicitly looking out for these kind of signals, but rather like we try to improve our algorithms, and we have people test our algorithms by looking at these features to see if we're getting things right. So,
okay, thanks.
So our next question is from Nadav Cohen of TopGreet, and he's asking, why in the same calendar day do I often see changes in rankings of pages for the same keyword, even when all the relevant websites didn't make any changes in the content or structure of their websites?
Yeah, why do rankings change? I don't know. So on the one hand, we make changes in search all the time, so that's something that happens all the time. On the other hand, there are, I don't know, hundreds of tests that are always run in parallel with regards to Google search. That sometimes includes things like small UI changes, like tweaks in colors or text size, and sometimes it includes ranking changes as well. And we do these kind of A/B tests pretty much all the time. There are always, I think, like multiple hundred A/B tests running. So depending on when you search, how you search, it might be that you hit one of these versions where there's actually a ranking test that's taking place. And with these ranking tests, it's not that we're testing individual sites, like where they should rank, but rather we're testing the whole algorithm and then looking at millions of results and trying to figure out, does this ranking change kind of improve things in the way that we want it?
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and final question, tricky. We get many CVs for different SEO positions in our company, Angora Media. Let's say you will start your own SEO agency. What are the skills and qualities you believe highly qualified candidates require?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know where I would start. So I think there are multiple parts of the SEO world that are relevant with regards to kind of work that is done at an SEO agency. And that includes some very highly technical things like, I don't know, understanding JavaScript, being able to code, being able to take log files and extracting like how Googlebot is crawling them. That's something that could play a role. But there's also all of the online marketing side, which, I don't know, technically, I would see that as a part of SEO as well. Because if you're able to promote your websites in a way that attracts users, then that's something that essentially over time builds more traffic and probably more visibility in search as well. And those are things that don't need to be balanced in the same person. It could be that you have some people who are more technically oriented and some people who are more kind of online marketing oriented. And I think that kind of balance is something that you would need within an agency, but it doesn't need to be like one person who does everything. So that's something where I'm always a little bit cautious when people come and say like, I work in online marketing and now I want to understand programming so that I also cover all of these technical SEO things. And from my point of view, you don't have to do everything. You can be really good at online marketing and not understand anything about JavaScript, and that's still very critical for SEO. So that's something where it's sometimes interesting to have both sides, but you don't need to have them.
Okay, thank you very much, John. It was a pleasure to meet you, and in doing this interview, I'm sure it will have huge value for the Israeli SEO community. If you're around in Israel next week, we have our conference Next Case. You're more than welcome, and I even brought you some present.
Oh my
which
God.
is a bamba, Israeli snack.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So you can enjoy this
Thank
country.
you. Cool.
Thank you very much.
No, it was great.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.